Hey nerds, and welcome back to Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies. I'm Brian from Good Nerd Bad Nerd. So we had a pretty solid episode this week, and I'm going to get to that in a minute. But first, thank you guys who are commenting down below. I really appreciate it. I read all the comments, even if I don't get a chance to respond. But I wanted to point out Kyle Livingston's comment where he brought to my attention that the producers did say we will see more returning characters, but that the first episode was just establishing what the main characters, their new personas were in the framework. So glad to hear that, because that was one of my big complaints for that first episode. Moving forward, really looking forward to what the framework's going to offer. But this week, we got a lot. Specifically, we got a lot with Aida and what her goals are and things like that. But first, Coulson. The framework Coulson is such a nerd. We've gotten some glimpses of this in the real world Coulson, with his kind of fanboying over Captain America. And in the comics, they've actually taken that idea of him being a really, if he wasn't a secret agent, he'd be a huge comic book nerd because he knows the stats on every hero. So we see this, we see his kind of nerdiness come out in the framework, and I love that. I thought that was great. Now, Ward is, he seems to be the Ward that everyone wanted from the very beginning until it turns out he was bad. But some people online are speculating that he's actually a triple agent. I don't know. He's a double agent. He's like playing the shield resistance, and he's actually still with Hydra. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think he's actually going to be a legitimate good guy in this environment, and it's going to be something that is going to be hard for Daisy to deal with, especially once they have to actually just kind of destroy the framework. May is very distraught and broken, and I think that's very obvious. We know her regret from the real world was having to kill that little girl when she got her name as the Cavalry, but I think this May is seeing just what the consequence of inaction is. And she works for Hydra. She, toes the company line, but she's broken. I think the devastation that came from her inaction weighs on her more than what does in the real world. Mind you, it's a lose-lose for her. There was no real good solution. There was a solution that saved the most amount of lives, and honestly, that's what it comes down to in that role, but she's very broken. And it's going to take Coulson, I think, to come in and free her from this world and what she has become in it. And then Gemma and Daisy, they had such hope growing through this episode, just have it crushed by Fitz. So they've got, next week's going to be tough for them. It's going to be really tough for them. I'm going to talk about everyone else more specifically, but first, let's get into Project Looking Glass, because this is what Aida's big plan is. And this has a lot to do with how she was treated in the real world, specifically by Radcliffe. You can see a lot of her actions and motivations based on how she was treated differently by Radcliffe and Fitz. Fitz actually treated her like a person, and that's why he's in this position in the framework. But Radcliffe really did treat her like a machine. He loved her, but only as a machine, a product of his genius, and she resents him for that. Project Looking Glass, we don't get too much about it yet. They give hints that it's about a way for Aida to go back and forth between the reality and the framework. There's some speculation that it's actually so she can take the consciousness that she has created, or the versions of the people she's created, and implant them back into the bodies. So overwriting who Fitz was, overwriting who the others were, so that she can bring these versions of them back with her to the real world. There's also some crazy speculation that Aida, with the use of the Darkhold, is going to try and overwrite reality with her version of the framework. But that's a bit far-fetched for me. Now, real-world versions of the framework, there's only two things I could really find, and take them for what you will, but the Boeing EC-135C is a vehicle, it's a big jet in the U.S. Command and Command and Control Center for the United States. It's their airborne command center. It's codenamed the Looking Glass. Obviously, this is a reference to, all of this is a reference to the Alice in Wonderland through the Looking Glass thing. But so that's one. And then the other, and this is a bit out there, but it was a conspiracy theory website that says Project Looking Glass was a secret project that was trying to use this device they had created to peer into possible futures, so possible alternate realities, so a kind of a future multiverse looking device. This is interesting. I don't think this is where the writers got any ideas for this, but it is interesting because Aida is looking to jump between two different realities. So we do kind of have this quasi-multiverse thing going on, but again, this is from this kind of weird conspiracy theory website, so take it for what you will. It was just kind of an interesting parallel. What do you guys think Project Looking Glass is? What do you think Aida's ultimate goal is? I think we don't really know enough to have a good idea, but I think most likely it's that she wants to take some of the framework back with her because she knows this isn't permanent and it could be shut down at any point. So if she is able to take these remnants, the new Fitz, the new May, the parts of the reality that she's created, if she can take that with her, I think that's going to be a huge deal for her. Now, what else did we learn about Aida this week? We do know the Madam Hydra she's supposed to be based off of, and that is the Ophelia Sarkeesian. This is the Madam Hydra that is normally known as Viper. Viper is the name she's currently going by in the comics. She's gone back and forth between Viper and Madam Hydra, but she's got an interesting history with the other character named Madam Hydra. During the big 3-part war crossover fight between S.H.I.E.L.D., Leviathan, and Hydra, Viper was betrayed by the then Madam Hydra, Valentina de something, who was a triple agent for Leviathan. And at the moment she betrayed Viper, she shot her in the head and left her for dead. Now, hours later, when the Hydra Council showed up, Hive, who was on the council, basically brought her back to life by infecting her with parasites, and that led to her looking like this, with this big squid head on her. She looked really grotesque and, for someone with a squid head. The interesting thing is that later on, during the Dark Reign storyline where Norman Osborn was in charge of the Avengers and Hammer, he had Ophelia go under surgery, and they were able to remove that kind of squid head portion and return her to how she looked previously. So what does that mean for the show? Are we going to see any of that? Probably not. I wouldn't be surprised if at some point Aida manipulates the framework in some regard to kind of seem larger than life or change her appearance in some ways, but I don't think we're going to see her with a squid head. But, who knows? Next, Fitz. Fitz is a tough guy this episode. You can really see him waver. You can see him conflicted. You can see that Aida has rewritten his emotions for Gemma and planted her name, her face in that spot. So those strong emotions that he has for Gemma, she has rewritten it to be for her. The line where he says, "I would cross the universe or the galaxy for you," that, obviously is what he did for Gemma. Radcliffe says as much, and you can see this is really, really hurting Fitz. So why does he shoot Agnes? He shoots her because he is so conflicted, but he wants to believe in this world and this relationship with Aida. He wants that to be real. I guarantee you he's got conflicting memories right now, but he wants that one to be real. And so that's why he shoots her. He's doubling down on this because the memories, the kind of subconscious stuff that's coming up, he can't trust that, but what he can see with his eyes, that's what he trusts. So that's why he doubles down and shoots her. It's going to be a tough way for him to come back, and it's going to be pretty emotional, I think, especially for Gemma. But all of that to say, the final thing about this episode is Mack. Mack's storyline, I think, is going to be the most heartbreaking for this entire season, or for this entire part in the framework. And I think the writers have based his storyline on a DC comic, actually, for The Man Who Has Everything. This was a Superman storyline. It was an annual. He is captured by a alien symbiotic plant and put into something essentially like the framework, where he's given everything he wants, all of his hopes, all of his dreams, basically. Now, for Mack, he's here. He's got a daughter who's brilliant. He loves her. They respect each other. And he's going to have to give her up. And that's the thing. The only way Superman could escape the Black Mercy was to give up the things he wanted most in life. And that's what Mack's going to have to do. He's going to have to give up this life, this happiness he has with his daughter. And it's going to be very painful for him. So that, I think, is going to be interesting to watch. I feel for the Mack, it's going to be really, really gut-wrenching when it comes to that, I think. Especially when he learns that she's not real, because he in his heart, he feels that she's real and he wants her to be real. And it's just going to be brutal. So what do you guys think? What did you think of this episode? Are you liking the framework stuff so far? Where do you think this is going? And please let me know what you think Project Looking Glass actually is and what Aida's plan is. So until next week, guys, I'm Brian from Good Nerd, Bad Nerd, and this has been Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Theories and Conspiracies.